Mere conservatism.
David, I just got to tell you, you don't know how cathartic this is for me to be talking to you about the issues of the day. Because when I watch the news, I feel like I'm about to bust sometimes.
Yeah,
I'm just
like
telling you.
Yeah, it's like a dam building up and all this. It's good to have an outlet. By the way, follow us on Facebook and comment on our podcast that we post there. Make sure that you have an outlet. Talk with us about it.
That's the podcast, Mere Conservatism, by the way.
That's right. Mere Conservatism. We want to know what you think about it as well. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitter. You can find us on Twitter, too.
Yeah.
So, comment, respond to us, because this is something that we have felt over the years. At times, you feel like you're on an island.
Yeah. I can't tell you.
If you haven't lost your mind, you feel like you're the crazy one.
Right.
We have a president right now that will the first thing he'll do is cancel the XL pipeline building process. Yeah. He will attack our ability to produce fossil fuels and be self-sufficient in that area, which
taking away our energy independence. Yeah.
He'll do that to America, and then he will give the go-ahead to the European pipeline,
Russia,
which that's an issue in and of itself. I'm not really sure why the United States has a say in how Germany gets their oil, but that aside, apparently there is something we have to say about it in the international community, and that's fine. We'll just do that.
Trump rebuked Germany at one point for having a under-the-table deal about its fuel with Russia.
And so the thing is that Joe Biden will weaken us here. He will allow or put the rubber stamp on or approve of other countries doing the same thing that he's saying that we can't do here for the name of environmentalism or just anti-Trump sentiment or whatever. That is the opposite of an America First policy, and it hurts us.
It does, and it emboldens our enemies, because a weak America emboldens all the bad actors around the world. And Iran or China or Russia are going to be a lot more loose and fancy-free simply because America is not there to hinder them anymore.
And trust me, China and Russia, they don't look at themselves and see their past sins and their past mistakes and all the things they have to rectify. Like, we had 8 years of Barack Obama looking at our country and saying, basically, we have overstepped, we've done things wrong, and we've got to get knocked down a peg. And Barack Obama saw to it that we got knocked down a peg.
He sure
and now
did.
Joe Biden is continuing that after 4 years of Donald Trump saying, no, America first, we're going to win.
Progressives actually feel that America should just be one of the guys, that American exceptionalism is not fair, it's wrong, it's more of that Western-style colonialist type of thinking. And so they literally are the opposite of Obama America First policies.
Trump America First.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Trump. Oh, my goodness. Yes, Trump America First. Obama might have been South America First, but he certainly wasn't first for this country. All right. So for me, David, and by the way, that's David Perry, and I'm Cleve Walker. Didn't get that at the beginning, but for me, the big enchilada for America is the devaluation of life. For me, especially for me as a person of faith, God's creation literally being destroyed before his eyes intentionally, for the sake of an idle name choice. And so that's what made this action by the Supreme Court this past Monday, when they made a bold move saying they're going to determine whether states can ban abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. Now, that's in Mississippi that put that toughest ban, that's the ban that's being appealed. Governor Phil Bryant signed the nation's toughest restriction on abortion at that point, and it was stopped by another judge from taking an effect. And so now that challenge is finally going up to the Supreme Court. And David, I cannot tell you how important it is that the Supreme Court is taking this up.
Yeah, now, this particular law isn't quite as strict as, say, like the heartbeat bills that some states have,
right.
Because that's even earlier than 15 weeks in those cases. But this is the one. It was fashioned, and a lot of states have fashioned their abortion restrictions in a way that they plan to make a Supreme Court challenge.
Right. This ruling would determine if states can do anything.
Yes, it is a huge deal because this one is reaching the Supreme Court. Is it okay to abort a baby less than 15 weeks old? No. However, we're going to take a win when we can get it.
We want to save as many babies as possible.
Exactly. So that makes this a good thing. Yeah. Now, the Supreme Court is going to hear the case. That doesn't mean they're going to uphold the Mississippi law. We don't know that.
That's right. We don't know. But it's just time for them to take it up into these cases.
Yeah,
it's time.
This is one thing I worry about just a little bit. Because this is one of those things where if they don't rule the way that they should, it could strengthen abortion in the country.
I hear what you're saying. I feel like it'll maintain the status quo, which is awful. I don't know that it can be strengthened anymore after that. I think where we are right now is carte blanche for the abortion industry already.
For the most part. I mean, there are some restrictions on some partial birth things in some places.
Well, you think that'll be laid by the wayside?
I don't know. I don't know. So the only thing I'll say is that I will caution you and everybody to say we need to pray hard for the next year about this case because this is a big deal. It should absolutely be upheld, and if it is upheld, you're going to see 25 states the next day mirror this law. At least. Yes. Maybe 35. So this needs to happen, and I'm glad that the Supreme Court is taking up this case.
And again, you and I think, on the same page here. We're not saying that we believe that any life should be taken. I don't even think for the sake of rape or incest that abortion should be done, because it's not the baby's fault. You're punishing an innocent life for something done wrong by somebody else. So to me, even that is not justifiable. But as you say, we'll take whatever restraint at this point that we can get.
So there's a point at which you compromise in the right direction. Okay.
Yeah.
So in other words, if our options are no abortion restrictions and an abortion restriction on 15 weeks, then we'll take the abortion restriction on 15 weeks. Not because that's the correct thing and that's morally okay to do it before that. It's just that we need to do something to save people.
We need to save as many babies as we can. That's what I'm trying to say. As many as possible.
I really think, Cleve, that this is an issue that many conservatives have so much clarity on.
I would say so.
This is it's funny because and it's a good thing that they do. There are a lot of issues that we have as conservatives on economic policy or the role of government, things like that, where we differ. We have opinions, but maybe we can be moved, or we may not know everything about tariffs and things like that, and we can have different opinions and not quite understand. I don't know of a political issue, if you want to call this a political issue, which it is, among other things, that conservatives are more grounded on than this issue.
This would be it.
We know what we're talking about when it comes to abortion. We know the philosophy of it. We know the law when it comes to this kind of thing. And it's an issue we care about a whole lot. So we need to pray. We need to realize that these justices can be wrong.
Yeah, and have been.
They have been, and they're.
That's how we got into the mess with Roe v. Wade to begin with.
So we need to pray. We need to pray for the justices by name.
Yeah, I agree.
And we need to make sure that we stay on top of this because this is a huge deal.
It's a big one. I'm just so glad it's there. Now, speaking of the courts. And now this next thing, it doesn't involve the Supreme Court yet, but this is, again, showing the importance of the court and showing the importance, I think, of Trump appointing federal judges as well as the ones he added to the Supreme Court. This past week, a California district court approved the settlement of Harvest Rock Church in California in their lawsuit against Governor Gavin Newsom, establishing the first statewide permanent injunction in the country against COVID restrictions on churches and places of worship. Now, under the settlement, Discriminatory restrictions on worship and religious gatherings may no longer be applied to churches. The governor, by the way, must also pay Liberty Counsel, the ARC the case, $1,350,000 to reimburse in attorney's fees and costs. That's a huge win because this governor has been rebuked by the courts. It's an issue of religious freedom and liberty, which is another big thing for us. And that's important.
Very important. Meanwhile, in Canada, you've got pastors arrested by SWAT teams.
I can't believe that.
I see something like that, and the first thing I think is time to annex Canada. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe I could be convinced otherwise, but that's horrible. Yeah. That's horrific.
I have mixed feelings about that because I am so proud of that particular pastor who stood up and is still standing up, by the way, still resisting and encouraging other churches there in Calgary to take a stand. And we need to see this could be America very easily.
We need to see that. He's an example to believers.
There was one pastor.
But I pray for his release, and I pray that Canada gets their heads screwed on straight so that they can quit persecuting pastors in this way.
There was one pastor in Canada whose name I forget right now, but there's a video that I want to show it to you when I can find it. But basically, the police came in unannounced to their worship services. This was during the Easter time, and proceeded to lecture his congregation on the fact they were not wearing masks. And this pastor turned around and began shouting at them, saying, "Get out. Get out of this place. You have no warrants. You have no reason to be here. Get out." And he kept saying it, and David, the police left. I mean, he marched them out to the door. He even said, "You Nazis, get out."
Yeah.
Now, I gotta show you that video. Because the problem, David, is I hate to say this, American church leaders have not been strong in this area like they should have been as far as the liberty and of the religious liberty for the body of Christ. We really, really haven't been, and we just need to stand up now because they'll take whatever liberty we relinquish to them. If we let this go, they're going to take it. So this court victory for Harvest International, way to go, guys. We're praying for all the churches that have been subjected to these draconian measures and also established a precedent that you cannot do this.
Yeah.
There's such a thing as freedom of religion.
And it's important to do that. And by the way, the Bible talks about authority and government authority and things like that. It's important to mention. We've mentioned this before in this program, but these things are conditional. You can see it in Scripture that Scripture, the Bible, expects governments to act a certain way with a certain motivation.
Yeah.
And thus, we as Christians are supposed to behave in a certain way. When governments don't act in their appropriate way, it's our responsibility to follow God's law and not man's law.
As put by the Apostle Peter, by the way, when he was faced with that, he says, whether it's right to obey God or obey man, that's the question, basically, he was saying. And when it comes down to that...
Yeah. And sure, it tells us to lead quiet lives and to be good citizens and to be above reproach and all that stuff, but these churches are doing that.
Yes, they are.
They're doing that, and they're still being persecuted.
And even when they resist, it's a peaceful resistance.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not insurrection. They're simply saying we will not do this.
And so it needs to be met appropriately with the appropriate resistance. And I'm glad that the courts in our country are upholding religious liberty. That's a really good thing. Yet
another reason again why we need constitutional judges in every level of the judiciary, not just the Supreme Court. There are cases that get there that shouldn't have had to get there, were not rightly done on the lower levels. All right, so here's what the progressives are going to do about what you and I are talking about right now. President Biden announced finally the commission to study expanding and altering the Supreme Court. This past Wednesday, 36 members of the commission met for the first time virtually to discuss reforming...
Wearing masks, I'm sure.
Anyway, they met to discuss reforming the High Court. Now, the commission is made of dozens of scholars and activists, mostly progressives, a couple of conservatives in there, to lay the groundwork for the group's agenda. Listen to this, David. The commission will explore if Congress has the power to reverse Supreme Court rulings. and, of course, whether justices should serve on the bench for life. Those are a couple of the issues that they're going to be looking at.
Do they have the power to reverse rulings?
Supreme Court rulings.
What do you think, Cleve?
The answer, of course, is no, and it's an emphatic no that other people would make more emphatic by using the wrong language. But I would say no, okay? However, we have seen you cannot put anything past these progressives. They can create rights out of whole cloth. They've done it before. And so, but
and by the way, it's these branches are supposed to work together. So it's all, in many cases, is all about what the executive will enforce, right?
Yeah, sometimes it comes down to that. Yeah,
so,
good point.
I mean, these powers in our government are supposed to balance each other out. Mm-hmm. When you have, this is what happens when you have one party rule in the Congress and in the presidency. I could see the Congress overturning, quote unquote, a ruling. Here's what they can do, I believe. They can take a law that the Supreme Court has struck down and rewrite it in a way that it passes what the Supreme Court's criticism of it was. They can change those provisions. They could take Obamacare, for instance. It was upheld because Justice Roberts decided to rewrite the law,
yeah,
and then interpret it that way.
Yeah.
He basically rewrote it. What he should have done is struck down the law and said, if you want this, you have to reword this provision about the government mandate, about the requirement that you have to reword that so that it's a tax,
right,
or whatever.
Even though the president said it's not a tax. That's my point.
Right. So in other words, that would be something Congress can do. Oh, okay, Supreme Court, we wrote this law wrong? Okay, we'll rewrite it, and then it should get by the Supreme Court. Or, guess what? Another thing Congress can do. They can amend the Constitution.
Yeah.
So, in other words, if with the help of the state. So, if the Supreme Court says, sorry, you can't ban guns, and Congress says, well, we want to, so let's amend the Constitution so that the Second Amendment is gone, they can try to do that.
Yeah.
That's the way that's the proper way to do it. Now, what you can't do is just override a ruling. Yeah. We're going to do it anyway.
This is what you're
not supposed to do.
They're getting close to. I want to tell you, this court packing thing, it's to ensure the thing you just mentioned lasts forever. And the thing is one party rule. If they can do this, if they can pack the Supreme Court, if they get some weird ability to alter Supreme Court rulings for whatever reason, we will have one party rule, the Democrat Party, from this point forward.
It's funny because you got Joe Biden, the moderate, right?
Come on.
And now we're literally discussing fundamentally changing our system of government.
Yeah.
We have 3 branches of government, co-equal branches, supposedly. And what they're talking about doing is basically wiping one out.
Basically, yes, literally. And I wouldn't have put it that way, but I think that's the correct way to put it, if only for people to wake up. Now, David, I'm not a violent person. I mean, I will defend my family and my home and my person, but I don't. But I got to tell you, the people, and I know some who actually bought the line that Joe Biden was a moderate who would come in there and have moderation in his policies and reach across the aisle. I want to smack them up upside the head.
And look,
I really do.
And let's get to the root of what you're saying and where you were going with that. I think, which is you do this. America's over.
Yes. Yeah.
Seriously.
No.
And I'm not excited for that to happen. But look, if they decide that they can just nullify the Supreme Court and it's no longer a branch of government, basically, there's no safeguard for the Constitution no longer protects us at that point.
Right.
The Constitution
because it becomes what they want it to be.
Right. The Constitution is there to protect you and me, Cleve, from the government. And if that isn't happening anymore, then we don't have a country.
Yeah.
At that point, it is time for Georgia, for example, or South Carolina to break away.
Yeah, I agree.
And be our own country.
That would definitely be the time for it, because this is why, by the way, they need to pack the court, because their plans are to take away the states' rights in our arena of elections. So they know they've got to get that court in their corner, because otherwise that's going to be obviously unconstitutional.
Yeah, I'm telling you, they need to be very careful about what they're doing, because they will meet with some resistance. States are there are a lot of states that just aren't going to put up with this.
Right. Well, here's the thing. Before it reaches that point, right now, I have my fervent hope, and I already see it happening. State governors have to stand up to the federal government. They have to start doing that. We've been laying down and just being too compliant for too long. But now, thank God, Governor DeSantis, Governor Abbott of Texas, and North Dakota, and other governors are standing up and they're putting the challenge and saying, no, we will not do this. We will not comply. And at that point, that's when things start getting interesting. But they got to do it first. We have to have the challenge first. So,
do you think this is one of those things where they're like the government tends to do, where they just a quote unquote government created job, where the job is you dig a hole and then fill it back in again, and then dig it and then fill it back in? In other words, they just have this commission to look at it, to talk about it. There's 35 of us, and we're just going to flap our gums about this issue and never do anything?
Well, to a certain extent. But here's what I really believe is going to happen. They're going to do what they're going to do. This commission, its main purpose is just to provide cover, just to put a narrative out there. See, before we did what we did, we looked at it in a fair and bipartisan way, and this is what I didn't even come up with them. The commission came up with these suggestions. So I don't think that they are harmless. I just believe that they are a necessary facade for the plans, the agenda that the progressives have.
Or it could also be. It could be that. It could be so that they have a reason to do what they're going to do. Or maybe it's Joe Biden defending his left flank.
Yeah. Well,
maybe it's him saying, "Hey," throwing them a bone. "Hey, look, we looked at it. We had a commission. We can't get it done, but."
Yeah, that ain't going to happen. He's already shown that he is bent on bending to that left flank.
He's bent on bending. That's clever, Cleve. I like that. He's a rubber stamp to the left. I mean, he's not all there.
No,
he's not all there.
Well, Biden, let's face it, seriously, he is not there mentally. He is just a conduit, and this is why they love him so much. This is not a man who, for any reason, has any core or any inner principles or convictions or rational thinking to challenge them. Whatever they tell him to do now, I still say that are telling them are Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. And if anybody tries to appease the left or do anything towards him, they're the ones trying to do it. Yeah. But Schumer won't even stand up for Israel against the left. I mean, so that tells you that they're not going to stand up to the radical left either. They're going to give in.
Anyway. Joe Biden may as well have a bit in his mouth.
Seriously, you're exactly right. It may help him walk straight if it did. I don't know. But one quick thing, and this is kind of cool. Everybody's been all over Bill Barr, myself included, for his handling of the investigation into Biden and things of that nature, his son. Well, Barr showed back up again. He was speaking at an event in Florida. That's his first speech publicly since leaving the Justice Department. And he was pretty emphatic as he railed against the secular progressive orthodoxy through government-run schools, is the way he put it. And he's questioning, Barr now himself is questioning the constitutionality of funding schools if they become simply vessels to indoctrinate as opposed to educate, and says we should not give them a monopoly over education. That he says that's become a disaster. So he's coming out real strong, and he says it's no longer practical or fair or even constitutional to provide publicly funded education solely through the vehicle of state-funded schools if they're going to be doing these things, teaching, like he specifically mentioned, critical race theory and things of that nature. So that's a pretty strong statement.
Yeah, on the other side, 2 free years of college and government-funded pre-K and 3K. The left wants to expand education to younger and older people
to begin the indoctrination process
even earlier, extend it even farther.
Yeah, and again, you and I were excited about that school board, I think in Virginia and some other places, who are standing up and saying, "No, we're throwing a lot of you out. We're not going to have," because I agree with Barr on this. If they're going to do that, then they shouldn't receive public funds, because now they are simply indoctrinating a program. It's no longer the area of education, and it should be taken away. Yeah. And it's not going to happen. But
simply put, this critical race theory is Marxism.
Sure.
That substitutes class for race.
Well, Barr called it Marxism.
And so, and it is. I mean, that's what it is. it's not something that should be taught, especially in elementary school. I mean, I could see it being taught theoretically in colleges and stuff like that.
Yeah, where Marxism is taught
as a theory.
Yeah.
But not K through 12. Why? Why would something like that be taught? It makes no sense. There's no reason for it. And, I have a first grader. My daughter just graduated from kindergarten. Mm-hmm. She's our oldest. Mm-hmm. And she's going to first grade. She's going to Perry Academy.
I love it.
It's my house.
Your house.
She's being homeschooled.
Yeah.
Okay. We have no interest in sending her to a public school. None.
Now, I want to say this because I agree with you. So for me, if I were starting all over right now and having kids, I would either homeschool or I would private school or church school. At this point, the public schools are all, unless something changes dramatically, and hopefully it could, right now they're all vulnerable to being indoctrination things.
And a lot of schools are great, and many teachers are great,
but they'll be the first to tell you they're being forced to teach stuff they don't want to teach.
Well, in our area, they're great, but I'm not personally. We have the ability to. My wife is a certified teacher, and she was homeschooled. She's comfortable with doing that. We have the ability to homeschool, so we're going to do it because I don't want to have to worry about what she's getting every day when she leaves me for 8 hours a day.
Well, I want to say this too, and homeschooling, by the way, is picking up. It's increased by leaps and bounds, especially after the pandemic where virtual schools became a thing. But I want to say this again, there are some great Christian schools out there and some great private schools out there who are getting good results academically and not challenging the morality of their students. So I'm gonna throw them a
There's
a
there's a lot of options in our area. Yeah. Not everywhere has that. No. If you live in a semi-populated area, though, you're probably going to have some options. Well, it can be tricky, though. It's a tough thing for parents to have to deal with, looking down the barrel of public education for their children.
Now, speaking of options, you have some options for hearing Mere Conservatism again on demand, and those options are again.
Yeah, check it out on Facebook. We post the podcast as a video every week. You can see that on YouTube as well. Apple Podcasts. Make sure you subscribe to Apple Podcasts. It'll download it automatically. You can listen every week, and we want to hear from you. So make sure you leave a comment.
And stay encouraged and stay involved. That's David Perry, and I'm Cleve Walker. Thanking you for joining us for another edition of Mere Conservatism. Bye-bye.